Okay, so I will start this global conference on global journalists, human rights defenders, and intellectuals all over the world. So the theme of today's event, today's conference is Global Journalist Leadership in the Time of COVID-19 Crisis and Future Impacts. That will be asked on that topic to only the journalists who are in this forum. The second one, global effects and implication on post-COVID-19 development, economy, and diplomacy. That will be asked to our intellectuals, researchers who are in this forum. And the last one, human rights issues faced in the time of COVID-19. So these are the three topics we are going to discuss, debate, and share our opinions, views, and experiences. So now, I would start with the introduction. We have Chairperson of Girija Prasad Koirala Foundation, Kathmandu, Nepal, former Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, and former Foreign Minister of Nepal, Honorable Sujata Koirala. Let us welcome her in this forum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I go as per the confirmation email I got, first come, first serve basis. So first confirm and followed by the rest. Bharati Silwal Giri, who started her career as a radio journalist in 1976 in Nepal and founder of English monthly magazine Media Nepal and an advocate of gender equality all over the world. Welcome her. Next, Dilbhushan Pathak, a TV journalist, founder of Interface Nepal, Media for Arts and Rights. And he's not here yet, so he said he'll sneak in anytime in between. Next, we have Bose Bahadur Balaya, journalist and PhD student. Next, we have Farduz Askar, first woman to head a major radio station in the Middle East. Farduz Askar. So she's not in yet. Next, we have Vincent Lyn, international journalist and columnist. Vincent Lyn. Next, we have Andrea Wen, international journalist from Spain. Next, Dr. Leon Ng, editor-in-chief, Wall Street News Agency. Next, Marivir Montebon, journalist and executive editor of OSM, a media fellow for reporting of COVID-19, MSU, New Jersey. Next, Ang Chering Sherpa, first Nepali journalist to climb Mount Everest. I don't see him yet. Kaushik Ahmad, editor at the Weekly Bengali. Professor Indrajit S. Saluja, chief editor, the Indian Panorama. Prabjot Singh, executive editor, PTC TV, India. Anuj Thapa, journalist from The Strait.
Thank you, Somnath, for having me.
Lara Gregory, attorney and counselor at law.
Thank you for having me.
Soma
Good morning,
Saheb,
everyone.
ASQ, ESQ, and attorney at law, incoming president of the Queens County Women's Bar Association. And he had more, and she had more other designations, so it's kind of long. She's gonna explain it later. She will talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Victoria Piloti, President of Center for the Women of New York. Teresa Naciel from Brazil, the founder of the Portuguese Language Society at the UN. Professor Bizan Pant, PhD, as advisor, Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Secretariat at MPPN at Oxford University, United Kingdom. And last one, Mobiz Siddiqui, journalist from Dunia News. I welcome you and thank you for your valuable time in joining this World Forum. To begin with, I would like to invite Honorable Sujata Koirala, Chairperson of GPK Foundation, and former Deputy Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister of Nepal for her welcome remarks. And I would like everyone to mute your microphone, please.
Zoom meeting during the pandemic caused by COVID-19, which has confined the humanity to indoors. I would like to thank you all for joining this meeting despite being located at different time zones and places. As we all know, coronavirus crisis has changed everything and devastated our normal life. This is, of course, a challenge to all of us, also an opportunity to start anew. Journalists have a great responsibility during this pandemic, whether pandemic or disaster or normal times. Journalists have been eyes, ears, and voices of peoples. Journalists reach there where even states have no access and bring out the stories for actions. Journalists deserve our salutations and commendation. I want to thank you all for coming, and especially thanks to Somnathji for inviting all of us and organizing this program. So let's start the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sujata Koirala, for your welcome remarks. So now, listens. Next, we go to international journalist again, Vincent Lyn, and columnist. Please unmute, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good,
we can.
yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, all colleagues and friends. Thank you for having me on today. Wishing you all you're well and staying safe and healthy. Yeah, my name is Vincent Lyn. I'm also the founder of We Can Save Children. My primary focus of journalism and working with refugee children in the Middle East and in East Africa, primarily in Uganda. So I'd like to focus on that and talk about what's happening on the ground since, obviously, the advent of COVID-19. I've been speaking a lot with the director of UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief Work Agency in Beirut, in Lebanon. In Lebanon, just to tell you, it has 12 refugee camps, of which there are about 500,000 refugees, mostly Palestinian and Syrian, some from Iraq as well.
Wow.
And I've spent a lot of time throughout Lebanon and Syria. Actually, was supposed to be there right now. But the situation there is, what's happening is that where most of the world is in a lockdown, the refugee camps are suffering interminably because they are been caught already in a lockdown, but it's kind of a lockdown with inside a lockdown. So there has been a strain, obviously, of them getting basic food and clean water. So we're having not the COVID crisis, that is not, the deaths have been relatively low, but the problem is now we're having famine and, of course, disease. And famine is causing, it's a dire catastrophe. Having spoken with the director of UNRWA in Beirut, And of course, the recent cutoff of funding from the United States, which was one of the biggest funders since in the last 70 years. And of course, Trump's decision to cut the funding, which is more than $400 million per year. So they have been trying to get funding from other countries like the Eurozone, other Middle Eastern countries such as Qatar and Bahrain. But since COVID, there has been no funding coming in at all. So the situation is extremely, one can only imagine the catastrophe that is going to happen in the next months and obviously into 2021. The situation in Uganda, I actually aid 4 actually orphanages of about 1,500 children. And these are orphans that have been, they might have just one parent or no parents. Many of them are from Uganda, also from Rwanda and neighboring South Sudan. Their situation is even more dire than Lebanon and Syria because not only are they relying on food and aid from local community-based organizations, their lockdowns now have been going on for more than 60 days. And from what I understand, I speak with them on a daily basis, they are still under lockdown and there's no food source coming in at all. So there has been situations, and I'm receiving awful video and photos of parents, single parents, mothers hanging themselves, fathers hanging themselves because they are unable to get food for their children. I've aided them with scholastic supplies, medical supplies, obviously clothing and so forth. But, people have asked me, is there any way to send it? Well, of course, since COVID-19, I couldn't even get on a plane right now myself and bring it, which is what I ordinarily do. So yeah, everybody's hands are kind of tied at the moment. And there are children there, especially the young ones who are not strong enough, dying of all sorts of, from dysentery, from malaria, from typhoid. And so, yeah, the COVID-19 pandemic that obviously is still rampant and continually spreading in areas around the world. It's causing the refugee crisis, the orphanages throughout Africa, refugee crisis throughout Lebanon and Syria and Palestine. Yeah, it's a catastrophe, and I really, it's pretty terrifying, and I really, I can't even, I can say prayers, but certainly prayers are not enough because, this COVID-19 has caused another crisis beyond the actual pandemic itself. So yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vincent Lyn, for your sharing your views
Thank
and
you.
experiences. Thank you. We'll get back to you again in Q&A session if there is some questions